we streaming?
We are.
We are all set? Okay, so I guess let's get started. And Tim had provided us with an agenda. First issue here is the issue of the NBC bank accounts that we had discussed at last month's meeting. Let's do.
Well, I'll start off by just saying that the task to take care of that is incomplete. And that there was a number of emails and questions by myself and responses by George back and forth for some bit of time that prevented it to be complete as yet. And that if everyone has seen those interchanges and has no questions or do have questions, we can discuss them. But if there's no questions, we can move forward next week. It cannot be myself, as I noted in some of my responses, can't be myself to do that. So it will take Tim or another signatory to go over to the bank and close those accounts. Probably best to move them into the operating account and then contact LPL to sweep from there, if there's no questions or other feedback from the exchanges we shared with you this week.
Barbara Frederico or Barbara
I gotta take these.
Do you still have concerns that you want to have discussed by the finance committee?
It is my recommendation to take a little more time and research it a little deeper, or to leave the money at MBT and we could open CDs there at a little less rate, or T-bills at about equivalent rate. But George has provided a lot of arguments against my thoughts, and so I open the floor to questions.
What do you think still has to be researched?
Well, we don't know the origin of those accounts themselves. We don't know for certain if they are capital reserves or not. I shared the board minutes from 2016 that are timed equally with the opening of those accounts, but I've struggled from the beginning of my 7 months here to understand those accounts, and it was just very quickly brought to our attention last November to move them and invest them, and quickly voted to do so. And without prior discussion, and again, I apologized in my email for not bringing up my points previously, but I felt it important to bring them up when I did. And now it's up to you guys to provide your best direction, I guess.
So I think I can address the capital reserve and why that's not an issue. The other two accounts, I mean, I asked you and you provided the general ledger detail, and to me, it's just, there's a lot of in and outs. They're marked money market, so to me, they're clearly money market accounts. But the capital reserve, you did have the resolution, and I guess what I would say is, in that account that currently has $419,000, there was a letter that went from bond counsel to the library in March of 2019. And within that, and I believe that the library did have a resolution, and it was the library bond proposition. And it did show that we would spend $412,000 from the library capital reserve fund, and as well as $988,000. So just for kicks and giggles, when I look at the general ledger balance, and this letter came, if I didn't say, in March of 2019, and I looked at that account that's now $419,000, and the opening general ledger balance on 3/1/2019 was, wait for it, $412,561.97. So the library had a resolution that we would pay for the capital project from those funds. That is pretty close to the exact amount that's in the account called capital reserve. So I would stipulate that that was a capital reserve fund. But as we look at the building project, we have expended that money, and the library has no need and should not have those in capital reserve funds.
Well, I
That's
would counter that and say that much of that would probably have to go towards the refund to the school district.
Well, I think that when we looked at it, we had it, it can go anywhere we want it to go, and a lot of that will. But there is money in the operating account, and money is gonna become mature. Again, that wasn't set up, it wasn't designated to pay for a refund, it was to pay for the project, so it should reimburse the operating account. And that's, yep. This did come upon quickly last week because I looked at it. When I look at things, I try to do what's best for the library. And I made a decision to bring this up because I felt it was important enough, and I felt that I did enough research and understood it enough that we could benefit by doing this. And I didn't want to wait a month or another month to totally figure it out. And the fact is, regardless of the nature of these funds, we have the right and really the obligation to invest them in the best, blah, blah, blah. That hopefully is all I have to say on this, but again, I respect that it's a board decision.
Just following up on that last point, and just so I'm clear on everything. I certainly understand, and we can discuss if more needs to be done, just as far as, chasing back these accounts and where the money came from, that went into them, so we have a clear picture from an accounting standpoint of exactly what pool of money is in each of these accounts, and we're tracing things forward properly. I fully understand that, but just, as far as understanding, which money is designated as belonging to which, pots of money. But is there any reason that, that this distinction between whether that money is in a capital reserve fund or not makes any difference as to how we're allowed to invest that money? Or what we can, in the meantime, what we can do with that money while it's not being actually used?
I'll be frank, I don't know enough to answer that fully. Knowing it's in the MBT bank and knowing it's labeled as capital reserve gives it a definition. Breaking that money down into manageable FDIC level CDs at another entity, LPL, dilutes that trail to some degree, and certainly dilutes the labeling of it as such. And again, that label I inherited, so whether it's capital reserve or not.
Well, again, I mean, that number is the money that the library put in there. I mean, in my mind, it's not even, but.
I will say that I've had a personal frustration in the trail of things that I haven't been able to piece together yet, that since I've started here. And I will say that I don't want to exasperate that by diluting this money. That's my opinion. It's not a municipal law thing. It's just, it's just the pieces have not come together for me yet. A lot of this stuff, particularly with the project and all the funds moving in and out. And I only want to proceed with more caution and conservatism. That's all I can say on the matter.
Just, I guess, on that one, kind of following on the same thought there. I recognize that there would be, I'm sure there's at least some administrative burden, but can you give a sense of like how, if we were to say, okay, let's take this money, transfer it to, to Capcom, so they can be invested and, put in CDs like we've done with the other, the funds. How administratively burdensome would it be to separately track this money, separate from the other funds that we put in there, just to keep, just so, in the interim, as if we want to do a little more digging and just kind of confirm for ourselves 100% that this is what that funds, you know, where these funds came from, what they are. In the meantime, we kind of at least have a, you know, we have the ability, if it turns out, oh, this money actually was earmarked for something different, or it has some different purpose and we should have been treating it differently for some reason, we have our eye on that money and know where it is, and it isn't just commingled or blended in with everything else there. How much of it, you know, is this a, not a big deal? We just have to kind of track those accounts, or is
Yeah.
this like a big
I don't
administrative
think,
hassle?
I don't think it's a big administrative hassle to do
Yeah.
that.
So in that case, I would just be inclined, I think, to go forward with what we had voted on last month. And, you know, and again, I appreciate the, you know, the efforts to really try and trace all the money that we do have and understand where that money came from, and if there is any distinction between different, you know, accounts that we ought to be taking into account. So I definitely appreciate efforts toward that end. But also, you know, right now, you know, with interest rates, and the amount of money we're talking about to kind of forego earning interest on that money, it seems responsible, you know, from just a financial point of view. So I would be inclined to move ahead with that, and hopefully, maybe we will have a little more certainty or clarity, you know, just, you know, it will kind of make everybody comfortable with that, soon. So, anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Is your concern only with the reserve or the money market ones too?
Well, both, but that money market isn't clearly labeled as a reserve or restricted in anything, so at least according to the ledger accounts.
I mean, because if you hadn't found any concerns for the reserve, I would say just leave the reserve and move money market ones and do more investigation later, but if it's with all of them, I would kind of, in Mike's one or two, just saying we should invest it and just keep track of it.
Can you have them pull it out so it's separate? So all that money is invested in CDs, but it shows up as a separate account?
I'd have to talk to LPL. And what I'll ask them is, can we have a master account that's
Yeah.
broken down by the smaller?
And that's what I mean. So then
Because
you
they're
would know
gonna-
where that
They're gonna
money
take the
is.
money and divide it into different banks.
But at
Because
least
the
you
FDIC
know that
insurance is only
it
up to
sits
50.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they've done that at NBT. They've given us a master account and they've supported that through, you know, through, the third-party collateral and so on.
And I understand and respect due diligence, so I get that, and I understand the tracking of the money and wanting to make sure you're confident where it's at. So if they could do that so that we have this in a separate, maybe it would be reasonable to just move forward.
Well, if it's in Tim's or some board member's schedule, then as soon as they want to go to NBT Bank and discuss the closure of these accounts and the movement of monies, then I'll support that in any fashion I can. I just cannot authorize the closing of the accounts.
So who are the authorized signatories?
Today, they are Tim and Natalie here at the library, as well as Kathy and Alicia
Okay.
And Norina, I believe.
and Arena.
Yeah. She's the secretary, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll set up some coordination, I guess.
If they can do it with my signature and Natalie's, and I don't know why they shouldn't, although
I don't-
Natalie is off for the next week or two.
I don't know if they need two signatures or just someone who is a signature to go in and do this.
All right. So I guess let's move on to the next item, which is the audit update.
Yeah, so this should be fairly brief. Most of the adjusting entries have been reviewed with Marvin and Company. We're just trying to get the trial balances in sync with a few things. So I spoke to them again this week just to close some gaps. And then again, we just recently had the phone call about the bond fund, so that impacts the general, a last minute entry as well. So once we incorporate that, and I hope to do all that by the end of this year, by the 31st of this month, we should be able to button it up pretty fast from there. There was a draft earlier that I shared, I think, with everybody, so I don't see that draft changing much. Just a few typos or clarifications.
I'm sorry, did that draft have the depreciation of all the assets?
No, it did not. But those entries that you're concerned about have been supplied to them. In fact.
Okay, so when you said it's only gonna change for typos, the numbers are gonna change?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
Sorry.
But yes, so yes, George had proposed and I agreed that, that we, calculate the depreciation for the opening of reopening of the library on September of 2021 through the end of the fiscal year 2022. So we circled back with Marvin with a calculation for that, as well as some old assets that will be written off upon being out of service with the new building and new things. So those entries are being reviewed by Marvin and Company. I gave them to them a few weeks ago, but they only said she passed them on this week, so they're behind on that. But I don't see a problem. I don't foresee a problem with that.
All right, and the process with that is at some point we have to do a meeting with the
Yes.
audit committee, which includes a few outside people who aren't board members who are on that committee. And then that committee would then recommend it to be forwarded on to the full board. So we think timing wise, that this will be something that we could do before the January board meeting or I mean, not holding you to anything, but based on what you know of the timing right now.
Yeah, I can check with them, given that, they hadn't even looked at those entries and, for some
Right.
time, I'll stay on top of them and ask them if we could
Right.
set a date and maybe hold them to that date, but I can do that. But right, it's been kind of fluid because we
Yeah.
didn't have all our answers yet either, so I didn't really push hard on them
Okay.
to button it up. But now that we have those finalizations, and we can push a little harder and say, let's just bring this to closure.
Great.
So, but I will touch base with them and see if we can have that done early January for a draft to you guys that we can review.
Great.
And could I ask that we follow the process that's in the bylaws, that the draft comes to the treasurer and then is distributed to the board or the finance committee?
Meaning to yourself only first?
That's what the bylaws say. And then I'm responsible for presenting it beyond that.
Sure. Anyone opposed? Okay. Anyone you want to see it with George or? No?
No, I didn't, to be honest, I didn't realize that was what the bylaws called for, which is fine. I'm happy to, follow the processes in there. I just, and that.
Well,
that
now that
would-
I say that, maybe there's gonna come a time when I'm totally wrong. I don't think it's now, but you never know. I have the bylaws here somewhere too.
Well, we'll check on that and if it's,
Is there any particular reason you wouldn't want to share it with the whole committee?
Yes. Because it's my responsibility to provide independent judgment and overseeing the operations. And I don't want to waste their time if there's things that I see that are real issues. And I don't want to sound like a snob or arrogant, but that's really the reason. And, well, yeah.
And if it's not in the bylaws as such, do you still want me to deliver it to yourself only?
so here's the bylaws and what it does say is that once the audit is completed, it says the treasurer shall review the audit and then submit it to the board for acceptance. Now, I'm not sure how that meshes with the audit committee's duties.
Yeah, it really should go to the audit. I mean,
Because the audit committee's duties include reviewing the annual outside audit and recommend acceptance of the audit to the board if warranted. So, there's some overlap there. Between
if the
the
finance committee meeting, if they want to see it while I see it, you can so state.
So, I mean, I'm, again, I'm happy, it says that both the treasurer and the audit committee, it seems to some degree are tasked with reviewing the audit and presenting it, and it's recommending it to the full board. So however, I'm the only one on the audit committee from the board, and there's two outside people who are on the audit committee. And I'm happy to do that either sequentially, if George wants to look at it first and then put it up and then somehow present the whole board or at the same time or whatever, either way. I just want to make sure the audit committee does its job.
I just need direction. Do I email it to George? Do I email it to him and the audit committee? I will take direction.
I don't know. I mean, last year, I was on the audit committee last year as well, and you know, the former treasurer didn't take any, I think, I don't remember, he might have attended meetings, but he didn't, I don't know that he'd had an independent role in doing the audit.
That's correct. He had the bylaws apparently.
Yeah, and, you know, we had a presentation from you know, the auditors, the outside auditors who gave a presentation. So,
And that will clearly happen.
Yeah.
But I guess,
um,
I told a bunch of this.
I mean, I'd be happy if you want, once it's ready from the auditors, if they want to send it to George, and if he is, you know, happy on his end with what he sees in it, then we'll schedule a meeting of the audit committee to get the presentation and then go to the board from there. If that would satisfy everybody. Does that work with you, George? Does it seem to?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Go with that. What else?
Number 3 kind of goes with that. Those were the notes he was mentioning about the depreciation. So I don't know if there's any further discussion necessary there. And just lastly, I just want to let you know that we've begun the 23-24 budget process. And I know that it was sometime in January of last year that,
Okay, go on.
sometime in January of last year that he met. So I hope to plan a meeting with the finance committee to review the progress on that and give you a first draft and let you guys, take a first stab at questions and pose adjustments to our budget.
All right. Do you have just a ballpark estimate of when in January you think that this would be ready to have like a first meeting with the finance committee to start going, you know?
Mid to second to third week.
Okay. So we can try and, when I guess maybe when that gets a little bit closer, we'll do some polls for availability to see when all the members of the committee are available and everybody just needs to be there. That works. And, get that progress rolling. All right.
Was there another matter?
Well, we're out of time. I did want to go over the accounting and the other thing. We're out of time, so this got pushed back a couple months ago. And, when we discuss the finance statements, we'll look at that. But, there is a page that shows all the things that will be changed in the financial statements. And I think you mentioned that we did meet with bond counsel, and the question, the question that came up about the school district didn't want a refund because they had arbitrage. Suddenly, when Mike sent the letter to him, which I thought was a really good letter, suddenly it just all went away and it's not an issue. So we will be refunding them some amounts.
What isn't spoken there was George was the one that wrote the letter, even though it was under my name. That was Bill Gibson. So.
Once you get rid of the.
Yeah. But,
Clever.
all right, I think that wraps up the finance committee meeting then. All right. Are we gonna roll right into that, or take a few minutes in between, or?
We don't have a quorum yet, or unless Barbara counts as meeting.
We'll call the meeting to order at 6:08 PM. Oh. That's illegal.
To the flag of the United States of America,
And
to the republic for which
which
it
it stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Okay, the first order of business is to approve the approval of the minutes of November 17th, 2022. Do I have a motion to accept? Marcia, for the second.
Ted has to abstain.
I'll second.
Okay. Marcia, seconded by Ford. Right, with abstentions. All in favor of the motion to approve the minutes from November 17th, 2022, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Anybody opposed? Passes.
Hold on. Figure all that.
All right. Is there any public input?
Yes, excuse me, I have one piece of public input to report. This is from Lisa Whitney Buck, received on December 1st. She says, "The Guilderland Library is awesome. We have lived in this community for 24 years and the library just keeps getting better. Lots of programs for the community, and I love how you display different items in the glass cases in the lobby. My favorite is children's school creations. The remodel is great also. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Lisa."
Anything else? Okay. All right, the next order of business is personnel actions. Personnel actions are to accept the resignations of Olivia Rutherford, part-time library police and access service department, effective December 1st, 2022. And Ted Warner, part-time library clerk in the access services department, effective December 15th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel actions as stated, please?
Second.
Second, Mike? In favor of the motion, or is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed?
6:11.
6:11. Okay. Next is the treasurer's report for November 2022.
All right. So I'll make this as quick as possible because I know that a storm's coming and you're going into executive session. So we'll look at the balance sheet. And, there really isn't anything remarkable on the balance sheet. Our total current assets are down because we didn't get any tax levy revenue this month, although we will in the subsequent month of December. So I don't think there's any issues on that. If you look at the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in that position, again, there wasn't any tax levy, but we did get it come in on, I think, December 1st or something. There was approximately an $85,000 tax refund, I think Rustic Village or something. So next month, we will end up showing, so right now we're showing tax levy is exactly on budget. Coincidence? No, we did it that way because it should be. Next month, we will book refunds and that will create an unfavorable variance of about $85,000 of tax revenue that we didn't get yet. Put that in perspective right now, on line 30, all the way to the right, the year-to-date variance is about 129,000. So we're gonna get hit with an $85,000 variance. So you're still gonna have about a $45,000 favorable variance on a year-to-date. And we haven't even the large amount that were in whatever capital expenses in the budget last year, hasn't even shown up in the budget. So there'll be more money then. And I'm saying that just to the extent that it makes if that helps you in terms of the action you have to take in the executive committee. The salaries and wages were still favorable, notwithstanding the fact that we did book all the retro increases. I can't remember if it was unit 2, whatever union contract got approved. The retros are in there. I think they're about $9,000 favorable. $9,000. And even with that, we had a favorable expense. Any questions on the financial statements? So the check run, I came in sometime yesterday and looked at it. I thought that it was all appropriate background, not background, backup for it. The statement of investments, I think there was just, well, I mean, there's all kinds of things that I find interesting, but I think the thing that I found most interesting is when you look at the bottom at the interest rates, the prior year tax levy that we invested last year, they're now coming due, we're earning about 0.5%, 0.5, 0.75, whereas now we're up in the, going out a little ways, we're up in the 4.35% range. So there's been a huge, change in interest rates. That's all that I have to say other than whatever motion it is.
Do I have a motion to approve the check register for the period from November 17th, 2020, December 12th?
So moved, Barbara.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve the check register for December 2022, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? Passes
Sorry, 616.
616.
It's still too small over here.
Yeah, it's too small on the screen for me. All right. All right.
Everybody should have a big.
All right, you're on, Tim.
Okay, great. So as you saw in my report, my general areas of responsibility in the last month have been working on labor negotiations and finalizing construction cafe-related matters, and also working with Natalie and Sarah to, create a new standard operating procedure for HR. One of the things that and Tim, sorry, but one of the things we're finding is that there's a lot we didn't know about HR. So we're learning about HR, and it's good. A good example of that is that we invited representatives from civil service, Albany County Civil Service, to visit with us and had about a 2.5-hour meeting and learned an awful lot about the system. So that's good. On a slightly related note, we are done for the moment serving as an election site. So we served as an early voting site and as an actual election day site. It was a very positive thing. I may have briefly mentioned last time that our Sunshine Committee sold Gade donuts on the day of the election, and that in itself was a tremendous outreach opportunity because many citizens stopped by to tell us what they felt about the library and so forth. So that was good. And then holding the voting in the library, in addition to just being a good thing to do for civic duty, it increased our number of reference questions dramatically on the days of the election, and also the number of new library cards sent out or issued. So that was good. The Albany County Redistricting Commission has held, as far as I know, all of its meetings here at the library. So that's great. The group wrote us a letter a week or so ago saying that they appreciated the room itself and their many interactions with staff, and they wanted to pay for it. And we said, thank you, but they asked what the fee was. And I said, we don't have a fee, it's a public service. So anyway, they made personal donations to the library, members of the redistricting committee, totaling at this point $300. So that's very nice. In the PR department, we're having continued great open rate now at 55%. I believe the average is about 30 in the industry. And we had a great local art show, the Pine Bush Perspectives photo group, followed by now the Albany Artists Group, which is in there in the Helderberg room now. Fiscal department is beginning budget preparations and doing it in a much more comprehensive way in terms of involving the department heads from different parts of the library more directly. And that's starting to be fun and interesting. And also I want to call out Tim for, just raising an objection to the price of a a lighting upgrade and resulted in a $2,000 immediate discount. So I think the firm was probably hungry to get the job, even though $2,000 less is going their way. In terms of events in the library, we had a very successful Sonny and Pearlie concert. Sonny and Pearlie have been here probably at least a dozen times. And that was run by Jocelyn and Michelle Conti and Maria Buell. And then this Sunday, we will have Guilderland's Suburban Sound vocal group with a holiday concert. Interestingly, they are going to do a Ukrainian number based on current events, I suppose. And also, we've had a very interesting and fun musical instrument drive. And we once did a baseball and softball equipment drive, and we may do that again at some point. But so far, we've had 25 different donations, which include cellos, violins, saxophones, clarinets, oboes, and one bassoon, one guitar, and one electric piano. And we do thank the town supervisor for mentioning it in his weekly briefing a couple of times, which I'm sure increased the participation. And the instruments go to children that are associated with the Albany Symphony Orchestra. So that's good. We also have resumed bringing in Barbara Lucas from the WMHT. She's a family literary educator at WMHT, and she comes in once a month. And we've restarted our STEAM programming, so science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. And fun thing about this programming, this is, I think, once a month. It might be a little more often than that. But every meeting includes a local school. So this last meeting, since we've met last, included the Shaker High Robotics Club. And I think there's a little video on the GPL Kids and Families Facebook page, but it was fun and interesting and so forth. And then, so it can be high schools. It can also be like Union College or RPI, et cetera. So it's a neat program. Our CERC was down a little bit this month, but the year-over-year CERC is still good. So that's nice. The collection services staff, we reported last month that they had to deal with like a 2-week international outage in our main vendor. This time it was only 10 days this month, but it continues to kind of cause real problems in our flow of getting new material into the collection. They're doing a great job keeping up with it, given that some days 10 boxes of stuff will come and then for a week nothing will come. So the staff there is showing a lot of teamwork, positivity. Sean Silvernail, our director of IT, I want to give him kudos for voluntarily becoming a passport agent. I think we now have 7, is that correct, Natalie?
Yep.
7 passport agents. We are looking at ways to train more because we see the passports as not only a great public service, but also a great revenue stream for the library. In 6 weeks, we've brought in $4,000, which is pretty helpful, we think. So you probably didn't see it on your way in because it was already dark for most of you, but the sunshade has been installed outside the Normanskill room where the cafe will be. And tonight or tomorrow is its big test. It's not solid, it's a porous thing, and it's anchored very, very well. But when they came to install it today, we said, "You sure you want to do that today?" And they said, "Well, gotta make sure it works." So we'll find out if it can hold the load. We did have the NYLA annual conference, New York Library Association annual conference, early in November. We had about 10 staff members go to it, and 3 presented papers. That would be Beth Rienti, Amy McCarthy, and Emily Viscuso. And Natalie has been elected the vice president of NYLA's public library section for next year. So congratulations, Natalie, and that is my report. So, for anyone who doesn't know, NYLA's headquarters are right around the corner. There's a little building, Farnsworth is up high, and then it goes down, and you get up the hill, and there's a little building right on the base of the hill by kind of like Knott Road on the right, and that's the NYLA headquarters. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question? Just, I was just curious and following up on when George had given his treasurer's report, he had mentioned, he was pointing out that we currently have a positive variance with respect to our salary and wages compared to our budget. And I was just curious, does the library have many vacant positions right now that, just due to staff turnover, things that haven't been filled, or where do we stand compared to our full, complement of positions?
Off the top of my head, the two personnel resignations, or I forget what word personnel actions, there are those two and there are two others. The head of circulation is posted right now, and we expect to interview someone in the next week or so. We had only one applicant, so we did a re-canvas there because we wanted to have more applicants. And Tim, I thought.
Yeah, that's a key position there. That's been empty for a couple months.
Yep.
Still resigned,
Mhm.
as well as we haven't replaced someone in this
Right.
collections department and
A part-time
a
librarian.
part-time.
So 5 would be our kind of quick, 5 of 65, which sounds like a lot, but it's with the exception of Phil's position, we're getting along. The two departments, PPS and collection services, that are functioning down, kudos to them, but we'll get them replaced as soon as we can. So, yep.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Anything else? For Tim?
6 months, or we don't need time on that.
We were taking a vote on.
Yeah, there you go.
We used to
take
accept
a
your
vote,
committee
yeah.
reports, but then we discovered that we actually do not need to do that, but we need to accept a check register, so. Actually, it was Jenna who told us, who looked at all that up for us. So, committee reports, building and grounds, anything for them, Alicia?
Well, we did not meet this month, but just a couple updates that kind of stemmed off of everything that happened on our last meeting. We did vote to approve the budgeting for the expenses that were needed. I know we've had a few email exchanges between Megan Brennan and Melanie for what the equipment needs are. She sent her links over. She requested blueprints. Megan sent those over. So they're just working that through, and then I think Megan she's getting some quotes on some things, and that's when we could figure out the project scope and when we'd be able to open doors for the cafe. But Melanie said she's ASAP for her, so as soon as we can get them in there, then they'll be good to go. Those are my only updates.
I'm sure we're all looking forward to it.
I am.
Yeah. Right, anything for long-range planning, Barbara?
No, we haven't met this month. We'll be meeting in January.
Okay. And I know the finance committee just had a meeting.
Yes, first I have a update. I don't know if it was last month or 2 months ago, there was a resolution to have me consult with bond counsel over the issue of the excess construction funds. We ended up having a call that involved some people from the library, people from the school district, and the school district's bond counsel. And it appears that that's completely resolved, and the school is just going to we'll be able to return those excess funds to the school district as we had originally planned, and whatever difficulties or concerns they're working through, and so that's done. The finance committee had our meeting right before this, as Kathy said. There was a couple topics. One was just kind of a follow-up on the issue that the vote that we took last month about transferring some of the funds that were just sitting in accounts at NBT, transferring those to Capcom so that they could be invested and we could actually start earning some interest on that. We had some kind of follow-up discussion on that. We're going to go ahead with that. That's still in progress, but hopefully it'll be completed soon. And we're just going to, there's some concerns about questions about exactly where all that money came from in the first place, and tracing that back about where those funds came from, whether they were earmarked or are supposed to be designated for any particular purpose, and that's still being chased down a little bit. So we're going to try and just track those funds separately as they're being invested until we kind of get a full handle on that. So that was one of the issues discussed. The audit is getting closer to being in a final form. Tim Riley has been going back and forth with the auditors and providing them various information. And so we're hoping that in sometime in January, that'll be ready for the audit committee and the treasurer to look at that and whether or not that's ready to be presented to the board at the January meeting. I don't think we are sure about that yet, but we're working on that. And the Tim Riley also reported to the committee that the next year's budget, that's kind of in progress in collecting the information and everything and starting that. So we're hoping that relatively soon, that sometime in January, we'll be able to, the finance committee will start meeting to start developing the next year's budget. So that's it for the finance committee.
I do, so if I may add something.
Sure.
Okay, so in your board packet, there's a board resolution about the SAM grant funds. And I see through my oversight here that taking a vote on this board resolution, which I can explain in a minute, does not actually appear on my copy of the agenda. Sometimes I bring an earlier draft.
Under old business.
Oh, it's under old business? Got it.
And I
Okay,
got
thanks. Okay, so we can
It's in
do
our
it.
packet.
We can do it later then. So yep, it has a financial implication that is positive, but we'll do it at old business. So.
And then the audit committee has not met, but hopefully soon, as I said. Yes.
Mike, to your knowledge, do we have restricted donated trust fund money?
So you're talking as far as the,
Or is donated, people giving money to us in a restricted fashion? Or
so
will?
are you talking as far as those funds that we're moving?
Yeah.
I think we just, one of those, there was 3 accounts with money in it. One of those accounts was labeled as the capital reserve. We believe that money was formerly the capital reserve, but actually should be transferred over to our operating funds because it was the money that was designated to be used for the construction. So it's still sitting in an account that says capital reserve, but it should be have transferred because that covers the money that we actually spent on the construction. The other 2 funds was 2 money market funds. And as far as I know, I don't think we know where they originated or where that money came from. So that's still kind of a to be determined, and exactly, what's the origin of the funds that are in those accounts. So that's why we want to kind of keep an eye on them separately, just in case there's some reason why
Yeah,
that.
because they could be donor contributed restricted funds.
Yeah, those, I'm fairly confident those
They're-
monies are
they're
not
not.
donor.
You know?
We have some small accounts that have been left to the library and they are separate. And they're like for history things or other program things, but they're much smaller in dollar. They're no more than $6,000 total. So, but the big funds are not funds that were endowed to us
Like donors.
by donors. Yeah. Okay.
Where did they come from then?
To quote Mike.
Did we find them in the book depository?
I think over time, well, technically, when you have a surplus or you underspend your budget, those underspends should be going into these kind of funds. Okay, and then you start a new budget year. So I imagine, and again, I haven't put the pieces together, that these funds have just built up over the years and tend to be used for capital or other designated purposes that's so designated by the board. And so some of them were used as collateral for the project and some were meant to be used on the project and so on. So
Yeah, because
but
my
there's-
concern is sometimes people leave money to.
they certainly do,
Libraries.
but, and we
And
do
the
get.
money's restricted because they say up to
Yes,
many
they
X
do.
dollars to
Yes, they
use
do,
for
but-
what.
But this is not those.
Great. Okay, that's
What we have of those is very small dollars and separate on your balance sheet.
Thank you.
Okay. Personnel, I know Norina isn't here right now, but I think that's going to be, that discussion is going to be deferred to executive session. Because it's issues pertaining to negotiations with, Unit 1, so, I don't think we need to discuss that in this particular time. Labor management, I think I saw an email that there's a meeting attempted to be
Yeah,
scheduled.
we're trying to schedule a meeting, but so far, we're looking at January in terms of, it's a busy time of year for people's schedules, so.
Yeah, we're getting a little late in December.
Yeah.
All right, and policies is Vanessa,
They
she's not
did not
here.
meet. So,
And COVID action did not meet. Board development did meet. And interesting, because we're discussing, the UHLS agreement later, and, we had, Tim Burke join us
Oh,
at our last meeting. And we had a discussion about, type of training, and I think the question is always like, what topics and, what kind of training? And I think that Tim suggested that I ask the board, whether you like long session, like one long session, or several short sessions, like maybe one topic per session. So that kind of, he had a lot of suggestions in terms of just types of training, just development of good board practices, maybe efficiency, that sort of thing that a lot of boards like. I mean, I know you were there at the meeting, Elise, so you could probably chime in if I missed something, but I think just in general.
Yeah, he was saying, yeah, to come to an agreement, board altogether, what we would like to do training on instead of like doing like ad hoc things.
Right, and I think that it was floated that, because sometimes it's hard if you wanted a longer session to find a date, that, canceling one of our meetings and having a training session instead. So that was floated, and, so I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. I know that you probably know, or you might have heard that, starting in 2023, which is right around the corner, there's a 2-hour training requirement for board members, like for that year. Like you have the whole year to get 2 hours. So if we did like a 2-hour training session or 2 1-hours, that would fulfill everybody's training requirement for the year. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. Like there were 3 things: either cancel a meeting, have a long session, have a long session on another night or a weekend, or have maybe just several shorter sessions just on like one topic per session. Like a longer session would have a couple of topics. So I don't know if there's anything.
What does longer session mean, I guess?
I think that means 2 hours or more.
So each topic, he said, would run 60 minutes or 90 minutes, depending on the topic. So theoretically, if we canceled a board meeting, it would be about as long as our board meeting. If we did 2 topics, and then everyone would be covered for their 2 hours. So we could do that way, or we would do an additional day, some other time, a long session, or 2 other days, short sessions. So those are kind of the 3 options, more or less, right? I'm team cancel a meeting if there's not a bunch of stuff coming up, and then just doing it on a night we would have been here anyway.
1 2-hour session in lieu of the board meeting, then we're all done for the year.
Just wasn't there like a spring, summer one that we had discussed not having because people are on vacation or something like that?
Well, I think the August meeting is sometimes an issue because so many people take vacation in August. Although if everyone's on vacation, how are you going to have a training session? So
Right.
if you're canceling a meeting for lack of,
So people are up for reelection. Wouldn't have to take it, because we have board elections. So they would have not fulfilled it 2 hours, but who cares? That's okay. I'm just mentioning.
So maybe waiting until the summer or like, I don't know. After the reorganizational meeting or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a strong preference, but I just thought, you know, if anyone has a, you know, uh, if there's kind of a consensus that one preference is superior to another. I don't know.
Is there like a list of topics that are, that we'd be choosing from, or that would be offered, or whatever?
Yeah, Tim said that they have certain topics that, like if he was gonna run the training, you know, he could, I guess, do what we wanted. They have certain topics that they have set and they're working on other ones. Like I know that, that something like financial, training came up, you know, if, not all of us are math majors, right? Like I'm not, so, it sounded like maybe like an hour of, just kind of basic, reading of balance sheets and that sort of thing, and just becoming more familiar with financial practices or something like that. But I don't know if Tim Burke didn't really have a specific curriculum for that. It's more, I think his curriculums are more like I said, development of good board practices. And kind of a more, I'd say a more general approach. I think our committee was coming up with some more very specific things, maybe. And he was saying that, well, they're working on developing these types of programs, but they haven't quite gotten there yet in all of it, but they have a lot of more, I should say, broader type programs, but.
So
So I
if we
don't,
met for 2 hours, we'd all have to agree on what the topic would be.
Yeah,
of course.
that's what he was saying, more
You
or
know,
less.
another, and again, I don't know, just throwing out another possibility, it seems like, you know, even when we have scheduled board meetings, not necessarily everybody is always available, people, you know, or we have people miss here or there, or whatever, that maybe instead of expecting every single person to be there for one thing, maybe it would make sense to have, you know, maybe every couple months, have a 1 hour session, and over the course of the year, there might be 3 or 4 of them, and everybody could make at least 2 of them and complete their requirements, and maybe some people would want to go to 3 or 4 if there was, you know, interesting topics and they were available.
I think I brought something up like that and I couldn't remember what Tim had said. I think he wanted us to at least agree if the topic was gonna be offered multiple times, so we all had the same like base level instead of like a bunch of different things. We were trying to figure that out, but that's where he said we all wanted, you know, it'd be better if we all got on the same page about what maybe 2 topics we wanted to learn throughout the year. And then figure out like the cadence, whether it's just one, like a one-time thing. And I had brought that up, but I can't remember what the answer
Well, I
was.
think
If somebody
what
could
he
have made
said
it, how they
was
make it
that-
up.
Once again, the programs that they have developed, they also have virtual. So if somebody couldn't make
Oh,
a,
he said you could record it, yeah.
well, he also
You do
said that some of them are just available virtually.
Mhm.
So that you could have like an in-person training, and then if people who wanted to do virtual could do virtual, that sort of thing, so.
He just said it wasn't a good idea to do the same thing, like at the same time, like have it be hybrid. He said that they don't really have like a setup for that. They couldn't do like this, how we're doing it in person, and then it also
Right,
addressing people
But people
virtually.
could watch the
But you could
virtual
watch
at a
the-
different time,
Right, exactly.
Right,
So you
so-
could watch the recording if it was recorded, kind of.
and that would count as your training,
Mhm.
so. Anyway, so it sounds like maybe there's some interest there in just, shorter sessions that might, have topics of interest, and obviously we'd have to come up with a list. But, so is that kind of what people are thinking? I know this is kind of springing this on people, and it's not really, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, so it's a little bit long range.
Do we want to get an idea of what type of session people prefer? So then once we figure out like what topics we're gonna do, then we just plug it into that either a meeting time or whatever. Does anybody? I'm team cancel a board meeting and do it all at one time.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, once we get a list of topics, we can vote on it.
Yeah.
If people want other topics, they can listen to a recording.
Yeah.
They can do 3 hours if they choose.
Is a part of the goal of this to have us be all together? So it's some sort of board bond building exercise as well? Or is this just to do our training component?
It could be either one. I think that Tim Burke, he probably is more often asked to do the kind of team building type of
Mhm.
thing, but that doesn't mean that this board specifically wants that. I mean, it's something we could think about for the future. But if we'd rather just do 1 hour training to fulfill our requirements, that works too. I mean, so I guess we can say to be discussed.
Better a trust falling at the end.
I don't want to trust fall, not trust falling. I mean, I'm just asking because I thought part of the reason for the board development, and maybe this is just a different aspect of it, was to develop us as a cohesive unit. And so I'm not pushing for us to do something fluffy, but I didn't know if that was being addressed in another way, if we're just tackling the 2-hour component.
I think that was more what Tim Burke does.
Mhm.
I think that was more of his take on what board development is, which is more of a team building kind of thing, which has some components of what this board specifically wants to learn about. And, but I guess the team building aspect would have everybody in the same room,
Mhm.
So that would be what Alicia said, maybe canceling a meeting and just having a session, like just a board development session in lieu of a meeting. So that was, because we're already scheduled for meetings, so which meeting it would be and.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. But something good to keep in mind. So
Yeah.
just something we didn't discuss on the last meeting, but
List of topics and we can,
can be.
Mhm.
it'll take 6 hours and we'll vote on 2.
6 hours. Yeah, we can get a list from Tim. I think what he was saying, he was trying to develop a repository too, like on their site, that's coming along too, where people can actually go elect different areas that they're interested in.
Yeah.
But right now it's, you basically tell them what you want, and then they have something developed or they say they don't.
Get a
That's it.
list, we'll look at them and then we'll talk about it.
On it.
Well, so foundation. All right,
I do have some updates on the foundation, if I may. So the foundation met. It's been difficult for the foundation to meet because of lack of scheduling attendance, but they met on December 8th, and they wisely combined their Thanksgiving and their Christmas-ish meetings into a different week. So they did several great things. They wrote us a check that night for approximately $7,500. This is for previous commitments of support, including the aquarium maintenance and the Halloween trunk or treat, both of which were fully funded. And they were also at that point reimbursing us for several small local history items. We both agreed that we still have about $1,000 in sort of credit with the foundation for improvements to our local history collections. They also funded $11,000 in new support, which is stuff that we're ordering now. So there's a colorful Storytime area rug for the Storytime area, $150. A button maker for programming to make buttons that people wear for $550. An additional self-checkout machine at $6,200. That's meant to go in the youth services area. So if you think of the moms and dads with 25, 30 picture books that they're juggling and 2 or 3 kids and backpacks and whatnot, they can all check them all out in one place there and not have to regroup over here by the front door with those kids. So that's good. $500 for our Sunshine Committee for a staff appreciation event. $1,000 for 20 new folding tables. If you see the table right next to Sean there, it's 5 or 6 feet long and 18 inches wide. And as opposed to the wider tables, our Westbrook meeting room is smaller than the Normanskill meeting room was. So this is a perfect illustration. If I go like this, you only need about 18 inches to have a work surface, and then you can get more tables and more chairs into a meeting. The PPS department had also requested an industrial strength laminating machine. I assume this is for posters and notices that they're putting up in the library, and the foundation gave that at $1,800 on the condition that we also develop a public laminating service. So we're talking about how to get that done because it's a little bit, there's some learning involved in using the machine. So, and then one of the members of the PPS department suggested that as long as we were putting a laminator out in the library for the public, we should probably put a shredder out as well so that they could have a place to dispose of their documents. And then $800 towards a bike repair station. So these are, you've probably seen them on riding trails and so forth, but they just get bolted into the ground and they have air and they have wrenches, et cetera, that are attached to the pole and you can fix your bike. And that should come in handy with our new sidewalks as well. So those items have been approved and most of them are in the process of being ordered. And I think that was everything we discussed that night. So.
Right, UHLS? UHLS did not meet this month.
Can I say one other thing about the foundation?
Oh, sure.
We passed a resolution at the foundation to honor the recently deceased Jane Bonavita, one of the founding members of the foundation. So I wanted to remember her.
Business. To speak to the.
Sure. So,
Jasmine grant funds.
yep, Assembly Member Fahey, I think in 2017, maybe 18, directed a $250,000 SAM grant. SAM stands for State and Municipal Grant to the library for use in the renovation and expansion project. And then the architecture firm helped us sort out the 2 different construction grants and the SAM grant. Obviously, you can't use those like interchangeably, so you can't build the same fish tank, for example, with all 3 grants. So because doing a big project like that is complicated, Megan helped us put the appropriate things in each of the 2 construction grant buckets and then into the SAM grant bucket. We did have a previous SAM grant in 2017 to redo some lighting in the building. That was a $75,000 grant, and Barbara may remember that I used to joke at board meetings, it probably cost us $75,000 in administrative fees, time to get the $75,000 grant. But maybe because of COVID, it's going better this time. It's certainly going better because David and Tim are doing a lot of the paperwork and it's going well. So if you pass the resolution that's in your board packet, we will be able to deliver what's called a fully executed grant disbursement agreement to DASNY by mail. And they promise nothing, but they say that it's likely we will receive the $250,000 in the next 6 weeks upon receipt of that grant disbursement agreement. Chris Lanchanton also needs to write a letter, and honestly, it is, according to DASNY, up to your lawyer whether he or she is going to insist on a board resolution, but our lawyer insisted on a board resolution and wrote it for us, and it's in your packet. And if we need to, for the record, we could read it. I'm happy to do that if you want.
All right, the resolution reads, whereas the Guilderland Public Library applied for a grant under the State and Municipal Facilities Program, SAMS, through DASNY for the purpose of performing renovations to the library located at the library facility.
And whereas the library has been notified by DASNY that its application in the amount of $250,000 was approved, and whereas the library would like to accept such grant, it is hereby resolved that the library authorizes Director Tim Wiles to accept the SAMS grant monies approved by DASNY in the amount of $250,000 to be used for renovations to the library, and authorizes Mr. Wiles and/or the board president to execute any and all documents to finalize receipt of the grant. Do I have a motion to accept the resolution?
So move, Barbara.
Do I have a second? Alish. Is there any discussion?
I just to clarify, so in the course of the construction, there was basically $250,000 of that construction was kind of earmarked as eventually going to be covered by this grant, and so this money will cover, okay.
Can I offer some clarification on that, just so there's no confusion later? There were things added to the scope
Okay,
that were funded by this. So it wasn't part of the original budget, but things like the aquarium and some things were added to the scope that we went to, that applied to the grant for.
okay, but then that resolves some other questions that were in my head, so I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of accepting, adopting the resolution, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Hearing no one, it passes at 6:50.
6:56.
Better glasses. Great. Right. We need, is there any other old business?
Not for me.
Right. New business. Can you speak to the fee agreement and rate chart for 2023 for Rachel Ann?
Sure. So the UHLAN or ULAN agreement is the contractual relationship between the Guilderland Library and the Upper Hudson Library System. And I will invite either or both Natalie and Corey to correct me on anything that I get wrong. But this is our contract with them for annual services. And the main service that they provide is the original creation and then the upkeep on an electronic catalog. And another service that they provide, you were just discussing, which is training for boards and for staff members. And they have a number of other, services as well. But that's it in a nutshell. Not to be reductive, but if a board of a library were to choose not to sign the user agreement, then they would be choosing to create their own library catalog, which would be spectacularly more expensive than signing the ULAN and would require a lot of additional staffing here. So it's an efficiency move. And actually, libraries in general and in New York State were way ahead of, for example, museums, which still haven't really banded together to get this kind of collaborative work done. I say as a former museum employee, but at any rate, it's a good thing to do. I don't know if Corey or Natalie have anything to add about, it went up, I believe, about 5%. So that's the only, real concern of any kind, but I believe that 5% is still a single digit number in terms of thousands, if I remember that correctly.
I have nothing to add other than that this is fantastic and we should sign it.
Do I have a motion to approve the 2023 to 2026 ULAN fee agreement and rate chart for 2023? Mike?
And
Second.
right, is there any discussion? Great. All in favor of approving the lawn fee agreement? That's- It's, I
Aye.
think it's in our packet.
Barbara,
I'll say aye.
Aye.
please vote against.
I'll signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Is anyone opposed? Okay, 6:59. Right, is there any more public input?
No more public input.
Okay, we have need of an executive session for issues pertaining to negotiations pursuant to Article 13 of the Civil Service Law for the GPL CSEA Unit 1. Do I have a motion to enter executive session for that purpose?
Move to
Alicia, second? Mike? All right, any discussion? All in favor of entering executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so we are in executive session.
We got to.
It's 7 o'clock.
Stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you give let a robot and just.
Barbara need to dial into something.
Get a refurbished one. The cool yellow. I know, you want the cool one, but.
I know.
It does look, I know, I'm